With the Doctor, oh, this is so cringe. I saw myself. Weird but confidence and assurance in himself. To be honest, he was almost like a father figure. This is so like... He was everything I wanted to be until I saw through it. Welcome back to Unintentionally, Intersectional, where we dive into the way television's writers explore race and blackness. Even without a conscious effort, these narratives can often mirror the complex realities of racialized experiences and institutional forces in society. So the last one was on Black Mirror striking vipers, but this one, Doctor Who, is going to be a very special one because Doctor Who at one point was my literal life. It was one of my formative hyperfixations that's had a profound impact on me as a person. But as I got older, I think there was just things that distanced me away from the Doctor. Firstly, Chris Chibnall, but also because I kind of started to become disillusioned with what the character and the show represents. I will introduce the dimension of race shortly, but I think it's important to dissect what the Doctor is intended to represent, specifically in the eyes of the creators. The Doctor, as a non-human being with no limitations in terms of space and time, is posed as this universal hero, a universal figure of justice. And he's also portrayed as rigorously anti-establishment. We see him relentlessly oppose his people, the Time Lords, in this pursuit for justice and the defense of the underdog. The Doctor's inherent resistance to oppressive power structures is an essential part of the character's identity. But the way this is realized with mostly white male writers and directors yields some interesting results. This video essay will be mainly focused on New Who. Classic Doctor Who is just a whole bag of worms and perhaps a relic of what the show is. So again, mainly focused on New Who, but I think it's important to point out some certain things. The first female writer for the new iteration of Doctor Who was Helen Rayner, 30 episodes in with pseudo-historical two-parter Daleks in Manhattan and the Evolution of the Daleks. The first female director, Hetty MacDonald, was in that same series, Series 3 in the seminal classic Blink. Since then, there have been 10 female writers for the show. It took the show another 6 years for another female writer to come on board, with Catherine Tregenna, who wrote The Woman Who Lived, which was a season 9 story. The first person of colour to write for the show, and that's including its classic run, was 13 years into the revival run and 55 years into the entire history of the show, being Mallory Blackman. Since then, we've had, I say, slightly better representation, but we've had 2 other POC writers in the whole show's history. If you want to go by numbers, the 9th Doctor has 0. This is the whole, okay. The 9th Doctor has had 0 female or people of colour as part of the crew. The 10th Doctor had 1 female writer and 2 female directors. The 11th Doctor had 1 female director, 0 female. So again, this is just like pure white men, right? The 12th Doctor had 3 female directors and 3 female writers. And then the 13th Doctor, which is actually better than the previous 4 Doctors, had 6 female writers and 6 female directors. And it also did quite well in terms of diversity, if like 3, again, the directors, there's been a few, I'll put it up because I didn't, yeah, 3, whatever. So essentially for the entirety of New Who, the Doctor has been written from the perspective of English white men who often have a very different view on the way oppression is experienced for the most part. Ultimately, it's surface level and emblematic of the way race gets treated in this country. Race is something, if you live in the UK, you'll understand this, but race is something which is systematically attempted to be erased from public view and discourse. Often there's this idea that race doesn't exist anymore, as it's no longer present in the same insidious way anymore, and often it's like used, for example, you know, there's police brutality in America, there's even police brutality here, but there is a perverse view of privilege. And I mean, when talking about the Doctor is such a complex character in part of this conversation, because in many ways he is an unracial character. I'm sure Gallifreyans don't necessarily have a concept of whiteness or blackness. These are human concepts, right? It goes beyond the human constraints of identity, and he often will belittle this.
So, look, Time Lords, a bit flexible on the whole like man-woman thing then, yeah? We're the most civilized civilization in the universe. We're billions of years beyond your petty human obsession with gender and its associated stereotypes.
But you still call yourselves Time Lords.
Yeah, shut up.
This attitude is often reflected with this blasé approach.
Another stupid ape. I should have known. It's not about showing you the universe, it never is. It's about the universe doing something for you.
So it's okay when you go
to human struggle and relations, as they are ultimately trivial and menial to the grander dealings of the universe that the Doctor has experienced. But then this is when the concept of liberation that the Doctor represents kind of comes into question, right? Because ultimately, Doctor Who is a political show. Malcolm Hogue is a classic era writer who wrote for the Second Doctor and Third Doctor. I'm going to read a quote of him talking about the show. Remember what politics refers to, the relationship between the groups of people. It doesn't necessarily mean left and right or Labour and Conservative. It's the relationships of groups of people. So really almost all Doctor Who stories are political. Even though the other characters may look like reptiles, they are still people. I would say it's a very political show. Doctor Who from very early on has invited the audience through the use of allegory to reflect morals and ethics, as it was originally conceived as an educational show. The second episode in the entire show, The Daleks, is focused on exploring themes of prejudice, discrimination, and the dangers of absolute power through the now iconic monsters, the Daleks. The Daleks are a reflection of Nazi ideologies, such as racial eugenics and superiority. Daleks consider themselves as supreme beings and seek to exterminate or subjugate other races, similar to the Nazis' goals of creating a master race and eliminating those deemed inferior. Moving on a bit further into the show's history, the Third Doctor's entire run was marked by a strong ecological tone, allowing for a greater focus on real-world and contemporary issues, with the theme of environmentalism and conservation being a key theme of the era. This was reflected in many storylines such as Inferno, which warned on the dangers of uncontrolled energy extraction, and The Green Death, which tackled pollution and industrial exploitation. These stories were shaped by producer Barry Lett's Politic, which was shaped and informed by his Buddhist beliefs. So therefore, we can go, hang on, the inclusion of this moral messaging and then where there's exclusion in other areas feels a bit off. Because whilst there is a very progressive and liberatory politic behind Doctor Who, it does reflect the way white people in this country feel about issues regarding oppression. So there's various realms of that, gender, race, and in this video I say we're going to be focusing on race. Because like I said, Doctor Who as what it is ultimately representative of white liberal ideas on politics and specifically liberation. Whilst white liberalism often champions progressive ideals and claims to be an advocate for equality and justice, like what the Doctor does, there have been historically puzzling ways in which we've seen liberal values and ideas applied. Western liberalism's emergence during the Enlightenment, a period marked by, intellectual flourishing in Europe, happened at the same time as the colonization project. These were committed in the name of liberalism, despite there being this belief in the equality for all. And in efforts to kind of cover that up, modern white liberalism sometimes leans, and I'm going to change that, modern British liberalism sometimes leans towards this form of colorblindness that ignores and dismisses the experiences of racialized individuals. This perspective suggests that equality can be achieved by, treating everyone the same. I don't see color, without acknowledging the unique historical and social contexts that shape different racial groups' experiences. It perpetuates a false notion that we live in a post-racial society, and maybe that's what the Doctor thinks, or what Doctor Who tries to represent. It's complex. And again, I think that's why many viewers can watch the show and engage with the political moral messaging and take it at surface level, or read it dominantly. Let me cut to my oppositional reading on Madonna video to explain types of readings. I want to go back to Stuart Hall and look at one of his most helpful frameworks. His concepts on types of readings of media text illustrate simultaneously how dominant values and beliefs are promoted how alternative viewpoints are incorporated, and how marginalized groups may challenge the mainstream narrative. A dominant reading is a mainstream interpretation that aligns with the values and beliefs of the dominant group promoted by those in power. A negotiated reading considers the text and beliefs of the dominant group and those of the individual or subgroup interpreting a text, incorporating personal experiences and larger cultural contexts in which they exist. An oppositional reading resists the values and beliefs of the dominant group and challenges the mainstream interpretation of the text. This type of reading often arises from marginalized or oppressed groups and seeks to subvert the dominant narrative. So, like how that video was an oppositional reading of Madonna, this video is sort of an oppositional reading on Doctor Who. And unlike the Madonna video, this is something that is my lived experience. As a black male, I feel like I was forced to read the show differently at some points. I was super into the show, I would go to conventions, watch the behind the scenes stuff, and I still felt like it wasn't really a space for me. And this was only furthered by watching the experiences of the black characters on the show. First, we have Mickey Smith, who is our first black main character on the show, who I wouldn't really consider a companion, as he basically only had one adventure as part of the TARDIS team before being booted out the way. But I hated the way Rose and the Doctor treated Mickey.
What are you doing that for?
Because you told me to.
When was that?
About half an hour ago.
You can let go now.
Well, how long's it been since I could have stopped?
10 minutes? 20? 29?
You just forgot me.
No, I was calibrating. I know exactly what I'm doing.
What we could do is read it with a colorblind lens and go, oh, race had nothing to do with it. But when you look at it and you go, actually, this mirrors exactly the way it feels to be black, British and male, with him being constantly dismissed and undermined by the other characters. One who, for all intents and purposes, is unracial, but is a white-skinned character who has this superiority complex over other humans. Divorcing the show from how race is experienced in the real world is stupid. And forgive me, because my brain is still recovering from years of gaslighting, from growing up with white people who constantly try to undermine race and the way racism works. And sometimes because of that, I do feel like everything I say has to be bulletproof. But I really do want to emphasize that representation is important. Because Doctor Who has had a pretty poor track record with male companions just getting the short end of the stick writing-wise, period. However, when all you have is Mickey Smith to see yourself on screen, his character means much more to a black male child than Rory Williams does to a white male child who could see themselves in the 11th Doctor. Something I experienced a lot growing up black is dressing up as the Doctor on dress-up days at school, and either no one knowing who I was or my classmates questioning me why I was even dressed up as the Doctor in the first place. Can you see this was an all-white party, huh? And I'm glad that like 10 years on and having worked in a primary education setting, I can see how positive representation over the last few years is really helping black children not have these negative feelings about self. That's why when I see people complaining about diverse casting like Hallie in The Little Mermaid, I think it's really important for people to just shut the fuck up. But yeah, I hate how Mickey, is very coon-coded, and it's also just incredibly jarring. He gradually gained some agency in this series, proving himself as capable and valuable. While it's unfortunate that it took that much time for Mickey to gain any sort of character development, Season 2, Episode 3, School Reunion, serves as a notable episode in his journey. It challenges the initial portrayal as him as this comedic, can't even say sidekick, and highlights his growth as a capable and valuable member of the Doctor's world, providing, with an oppositional reading, a beautiful commentary on how being black often feels like being treated like a tin dog.
Oh my god, I'm the tin dog.
The episode ends with Mickey asking to board the TARDIS.
Can I come? And not with you, with you. Because I'm not the tin dog.
And he sticks around for 2 adventures before departing the TARDIS team in the mid-season 2 two-parter, Rise of the Cybermen, Age of Steel. Written with a much more nuanced approach to the first season, these episodes allow for somewhat of a growth and development with Mickey Smith. Mickey finds himself in an alternate universe where his doppelganger is a prominent, much more self-assured figure. This situation allows him to confront his own insecurities and assert his own agency, becomes an active participant in the fight against the Cybermen, and actually takes his own autonomy to choose an environment which is best suited for him, which is not with the Doctor and Rose. And it's actually a common theme, this, particularly in the Russell T Davies era, where the black companions of the Doctor are just kind of like, no. Speaking of that, let's talk about Martha Jones. I think it's first really important to set a bit of a backdrop to Doctor Who Season 3, which I think is really a new chapter for the show, because it shows that without Eccleston and Piper, the components to its initial success, that Doctor Who is a cultural institution again. The departure of Rose Tyler, played by Billie Piper, marks a significant turning point for Doctor Who. Rose had been a significant character throughout the first 2 seasons, forming a deeply emotional connection with the 9th Doctor and 10th Doctor. Her departure leaves a massive void in the Doctor's life and in the hearts of many viewers, as she does basically sort of act as a version of the audience, who both experienced the Doctor for the first time and fell in love with him too. Rose's exit in Season 2 finale Doomsday was a highly emotional and impactful moment. She was trapped in a parallel universe, separated from the Doctor and unable to return to her world. This separation created a sense of longing and loss for both the Doctor, Rose and the audience. Well, not both. Well, I want to make a particular point about Rose Tyler and her conceptualization and characterization before I move on to discuss Season 3 and Martha Jones. Rose Tyler's character exists within a specific social context that influences her experience and interaction on the show. One important aspect of this context is her working class background. Rose Tyler was presented as a young girl from a council estate in London whose experience in a single mother working class background plays a role in her emotional story. Much of our arc is about how the Doctor sort of acts as this social mobility, the ultimate kind, as he takes her away, again sort of touching on the Doctor as this symbol of liberation, but it's her working class background which was intentionally done by Russell T Davies to give her a down-to-earth, relatable quality, making her a character that the audience can relate to. It's with Martha, it's funny how unlike Rose, the social context of race, which is an obvious big part, is completely stripped away from the character. However, like this series of videos is kind of touching on, unintentionally, it is present in the story because, again, Doctor Who is a reflection of the writers and just the people behind the show and behind the camera. And this is what jars me about the racial politics in this country, because it's just something that everyone is socialized to just ignore or discredit the existence of racism, because again, race is just this no-go. I always find it incredibly frustrating how, especially when black people are cast in roles, there's always this reaction that the show or the film, they've gone woke, and you know, we looked for the best actors regardless of race and yada 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 yada. And I understand that ultimately these films are about making money and having the most broad appeal so you can make more money. But I do sometimes wish they would just stand with their choices. Like, yes, Zendaya was the best actor we auditioned to play MJ, but also for representation, we just thought it would be good to change things up. Or, you know, they just went, you know what? Let's have a black Ariel. Like, race exists. Race can be a factor. But instead we have to ignore race on a show that does know how to weave social context of characters into the story, but not race, because that's a no-go. I want to read a statement from the BBC after the publication of a book called Doctor Who and Race, which I'm not really engaged with in the making of this video essay because I kind of wanted it to be a reflection of my thoughts and ideas, but there probably is a lot of overlap. But it's this book that explores race in relation to Doctor Who, and it got this whole big, woke thing from the right-wing media, and then it caused the BBC to come out with this statement. Doctor Who has had a strong track record of diverse casting amongst both regular and guest star. Freema Agyeman became the first black companion, and Noel Clarke starred in a major role for 5 years as Mickey Smith. Reflecting the diversity of the UK is a duty of the BBC. And the casting of Doctor Who is colourblind. Okay, it's always about the best actors for the roles. Okay. And again, why is it that Rose as a character and even Donna are constructed to reflect social realities, and with Martha, it's just suddenly, okay, we're now doing the whole colorblind thing. So race isn't even a factor.
Whatever y'all got going on.
And I'm not gonna get fully into it just due to the scope of this video essay, but the same thing kind of happened with Jodie Whittaker's Doctor, where there's no real meaningful exploration of, hang on, this is a character who has been able to assume a male identity and all the privileges that come along with it, and suddenly they're now a female. And there's obviously going to be, in theory, or listen, that's gonna impact the way the Doctor now experiences reality as a female. In a show that is inherently political, why is race the no-go? Doctor Who under Russell T Davies could explore themes such as slavery, eugenics and discrimination in a great episode like The Planet of the Ood, but disengage when it came to addressing real-life racism, which exists systematically and outrageously on modern day Earth, or by trying to explore racialized experiences through Martha Jones. A big part of this, again, is white writers who just don't have the range. Again, the first person of colour to write for the show in its 60-year history was at year 55, with season 11, episode 3, Rosa. In series 3 opener Smith and Jones, Martha Jones is introduced as a medical student at the Royal Hope Hospital in London. During her shift, the hospital is transported to the Moon by the Jadoon, a rhinoceros-like alien police force. Martha crosses paths with the 10th Doctor, who is investigating the strange occurrence. Unlike Rose Tyler, Martha Jones is a markedly more independent, assertive and capable character. One of my favourite moments in the episode, which highlights this, is when the hospital is transported to the Moon. Martha quickly realises that something's amiss.
We lose all the air. But they're not exactly airtight. If the air was going to get sucked out, it would have happened straight away, but it didn't. So how come?
Very good point.
Martha Jones is distinctly a ready-made companion, perhaps to ensure that the audience didn't feel like this was another Rose Tyler, but I wonder how much of it is a reflection of the rather unobtrusive racial dynamics at play.
I didn't even mind that there was so much focus on the fact that I was the first black companion, because I was. So it never bothered me at all. It was something I was and still am so proud of. What I didn't anticipate, and maybe I was naive, was the racism from certain sectors of the fan base. That there was criticism leveled towards my contribution for other reasons, which I could handle. I could rationalize those away. I'm an artist, no one's gonna like your work all the time. People are entitled to their opinions, it's all subjective, but the racism, yeah, couldn't rationalize that.
I wonder if and how much of a racist backlash there was to Martha's casting. I can't find any sources that illustrate if there was any, but like the clip I played shows, she did experience some racism. So I then also wonder if that backlash to a black companion informed the way she was written as a character. Because there's definitely this safe approach to Martha's characterization and to the context, again, that inform her character. It's very unoffensive and crafted to make her qualified, almost overqualified. In some ways, that's what I love about Martha Jones, as it is a very positive depiction of a black woman who is the bedrock of her family, smart, intellectual, resourceful, and in many ways fulfilled. Unlike Rose, she isn't really in existential crisis. Her reasons for joining the Doctor are very, very different. Whilst Rose saw adventure and escapism from her mundane life, Martha's decision to join the Doctor stems from her genuine curiosity, thirst for knowledge, and a desire to make a difference on the world. She arguably was adding more value to the Doctor than he was to her. However, through her journey, Martha also grapples with her own sense of self-worth and the way of living under the shadow of the Doctor's previous companion, Rose Tyler, who's not even that. She's not all that. I promise you, she's not all that. But anyway, she struggles with the feelings of inadequacy and the knowledge that the Doctor may never see her in the same light as Rose. And to be real, he never does. This, I'll come back to this later on in the script, but the way he doesn't even care about her departure much shows this. However, she continuously proves herself as a capable and valuable member of the team, kind of earning the respect of the Doctor. And all of this is constructed outside of race because apparently race doesn't exist anymore. I read Martha Jones through the lens which is informed by the way I experience race. And I think Martha Jones, in the way she's treated by the Doctor, mirrors what it feels like to be black. I can speak from both my blackness and being in community with black women that often feel incredibly undervalued and overlooked. Martha's journey, particularly that season finale where she literally like saves the world all by herself, it resonates with the experiences of black women, and people have to fight so hard just to prove themselves and overcome social barriers. And I don't think this is intentional, meaningful exploration by Russell T Davies, because the way the Doctor treats Martha sometimes is so abhorrent. It's actually part of the reason I don't really like David Tennant's Doctor. I think he's overrated, and I definitely don't think he should be playing 3 incarnations of the Doctor. But besides that, on the treatment of Martha Jones, it's so uncritical. I feel like with Rose and Donna, we see through his connections with these women how they're all able to grow. Whereas with Martha, it's kind of just like, like the losses of Rose and Donna are so profound. And with Martha, who he treated the worst, there's zero remorse, upset, or self-reflection. It would make sense if the Doctor, through his treatment of Martha, went, oh, actually, I do need to treat people better and be sensitive of just the lived experiences that these people have on Earth. But there's nothing. There's nothing. And the fact that it's Martha, it's not, I'm not saying it's intentional, but it's emblematic of so many things. But just how race and the erasure of race plays a role in what Martha represents as a black character, as part of this big British institution. And that's why, even though I'm critical of it, there is a beauty in the way Martha Jones can be read. It's a black woman having to negotiate self-worth, her sense of agency, and her place in a world that overlooks and undervalues her. But in that same vein, one, the strong black woman stereotype, which is this cultural expectation that black women should exhibit, strength, resilience, and self-sacrifice in the face of adversity, often neglecting their own emotions and needs. It's so strong with Martha, and it's so polarizing to deal with. And what I kind of also wanted to say is Martha and Mickey going through these journeys is somewhat meaningful and somewhat potent. However, the fact that it's kind of being done not to spite the Doctor, but it seems like, oh wait, it's actually the Doctor who's the problem for these people. I think that messes around with what the show is meant to represent. And it's even made worse by the fact that she has this stupid crush on the Doctor, which just is just come on.
Y'all be weak in the knees. Stand up! Stand up!
And that's what I mean. Doctor Who is so flaky. Because we have a show that at its heart is about politics, ethics, and morality, but refuses, like British society at large, to touch race. Let's talk about how this season does directly address race.
But hold on, am I alright? I'm not gonna get carted off as a slave, am I?
Why would they do that?
Not exactly white, in case you haven't noticed.
I'm not even human. Just walk about like you own the place. What is for me?
It's such an offhanded remark, but it's so loaded. And it ultimately fails the character as the Doctor. And again, I always feel like I have to throw this disclaimer in here. It's not saying, oh, Doctor Who's cancelled. No, it's about reflecting on its past to help shape its future. But anyway, it ultimately does fail the character of the Doctor. The Doctor is this incredibly fascinating and interesting character because in some ways he's a god, a part of an ancient and powerful civilization, but at the same time he's incredibly divisive, driven by this sense of good, adventure, and justice. In some places, these characteristics really do conflict with each other, especially with David Tennant's Doctor, but at times I just don't feel like it's intentional. Like David Tennant's Doctor can be such an asshole sometimes. And I don't think Russell T Davies ever zoomed into that characterization or that development purposefully to trigger a meaningful arc for the Doctor. Which is why I kind of prefer Stephen Moffat's take on Doctor Who, because there's always this like deeper element of introspection with both the Doctors, especially Peter Capaldi. And on David Tennant's arseholery, it's really Martha who suffers the brunt of this, as he is in love with Rose and Donna is like, you know, this firecracker, whatever.
You just want to mate.
I just want a...
And the Doctor just genuinely seems to enjoy her more than he ever did Martha. Another episode which is important to this discussion is Human Nature, The Family of Blood, where the Doctor transforms himself into a human named John Smith to hide from a group of aliens. Set in 1913 England, the Doctor lives a human life as a school teacher while Martha poses as a maid. However, in defeating the Family of Blood, he has to choose between protecting his new human life and confronting the threat. And we've seen this dynamic before where the Doctor and his companion have to go undercover, like in School Reunion where Rose is like the school dinner lady. But Martha here has to interact with violent racism. And there's barely a thanks from the Doctor because he doesn't care about racism, just doesn't even acknowledge it. And it's fine if it was part of the Doctor's character arc, but it's not. You ultimately just don't care. And it's sad because it's such a contradiction that conflicts with the essence of the character. And that's why I wish Doctor Who, and I think this comes with actually wanting to express new realities and different types of lived experiences. Something I do think is at the core of the show, but it's something it can just do more on. I just think sometimes that vision sometimes contradicts Britishness and how race is thought of. And it's not just about race, but in this video being focused on race, sometimes the way it's actualized is just really poorly. A big part of it is how the Doctor is imagined as a character. What makes the Chibnall era so bad to me and the Moffat era so good is the way the Doctor is intentionally written as this kind of flawed character with really interesting realms for him to explore and grow and reflect on. For David Tennant, it seems like there was only a lot of growth which happened in those 2009 specials, which I don't think is enough. I always feel the need to state that critically examining something, especially in the realm of race, doesn't necessarily mean I'm calling for it to be cancelled or whatever. However, it does encourage us to have a conversation about how actively reimagining the show and the Doctor and what he represents is an enticing concept. I really do think Doctor Who's on its last legs, seriously, and I think that's why Chibnall did that whole stupid timeless child rubbish. We've discussed how oppression, liberation and the complex of human experiences, which is as shown through the show, you know, being set in all throughout time and space, is a universal experience. And in that, the way these experiences are impacted by appearance, ability and other social constructs is crucial to examine, and the show, in its fairness, has done some of that, but is weaker on other parts. And again, this even goes back to why I think the Chibnall era is just so meh, because there's no exploration or really, I mean, I didn't really watch it, I can't lie, but I just know there wasn't much exploration of, you know, the Doctor is now a female. One example of the Jodie Whittaker era, which I think highlights this sense of missed potential, is the episode Rosa, which sees the Doctor in Montgomery, Alabama. Ooh. An example of this is just this really awkward, like, Wikipedia speech the Doctor ends up listing. And I think that's the core trait of Chibnall's Doctor. Exposition and exposition dumping. And overall, Chibnall did a pretty poor job of giving the Doctor any interesting character arc or traits, which I think is why, again, he copped out and he decided to do that ridiculous retcon. But I really do think the future of Doctor Who depends on an active reimagination. Because while I don't think Series 10 is a bad season, for me, that's when I hopped off the Doctor Who boat. And watching content and how people have responded to the Whittaker era shows me that nothing impactful has changed the current trajectory of Doctor Who. That's why I don't know if I feel positively about Russell T Davies coming back. Why have they opted to going back rather than looking forward. Like, I mean, fairs, he made the show what it is, but it's just so... I just don't know if I trust him to write a black Doctor. I wonder how much blackness will impact the Doctor, and I hope, despite being a Time Lord. And I think there is something really interesting to explore with how much the show tells us that reality is riddled with oppression and discrimination, and that the symbol of liberation, freedom, and hope on planet Earth and across the galaxy is now a black man. How does that change the very presence of the Doctor on Earth? What can they learn about themselves as a character? How can we get out of this lull where people are only interested in seeing a Tennant and, to a lesser extent, just like a Smith caricature, which is really what Jodie Whittaker's Doctor was, and actually resonate with the deeper themes of Doctor Who? That we all experience oppression and are victims of some form of evil. There is still hope, there is still compassion, and there's still inherent specialness in everyone. Let's see with Ncuti Gatwa. Personally, I'm excited to see in the role again whether the show will just be different enough. I'm not too sure. This video essay has taken me some time to write, but I'm glad it has because I was able to catch the Rolling Stone article with Gatwa. I'm gonna read some of it. The idea of multiple outfits has led to a fun press circle where Twitter is regularly treated to a photo shoot of the Doctor and his companion in a completely different style each time. The most notable of these was a swinging 60s look, with Gatwa sporting a blue striped suit and an afro. The hair and makeup, which doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense because he has short hair. Anyway. The hair and makeup department have been incredible, he exclaims. Claire Williams and my own makeup artist, Bella, who is an old friend, worked so well together in creating my looks. Originally we weren't going to have the afro, but Bella convinced me and I'm very glad she did. It's a shot into the bloodstream. It's a statement. The Doctor's fucking black. Okay, hon. The Doctor will be black, but will this be reflected in the show meaningfully? Again, I really hope to be proven wrong, and it's yet to be seen. But I think the casting this season, in terms of ethnicity, has left a lot to be desired. But I think this quote, I'm going to read a particular quote from Gatwa, speaks volumes about the potential importance of the character having a clear, consistent liberatory politic, and it being willing to openly explore the different modes of oppression and how they exist. A big part of the show's post-2005 story revolves around the Doctor having survived a devastating war that wiped out the rest of his people. This is a plot point that has been undone and then redone. Its current status in the canon is somewhat unclear. Get them. Get them. But it's this that Gatwa latched onto because in that storyline he was able to see a reflection of his own life. As a child, Gatwa and his family fled Rwanda, escaping the genocide against the Tutsi minority. They settled in Scotland. This person has survived the genocide. This person fits in everywhere and nowhere. I am the Doctor. The Doctor is me. I decided that I have to get this role, says Gatwa. And you know what? Now reading this, I'm like, okay, yes. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Lived experiences are so important. Like, they mean everything. They really, really do. Representation means everything, and lived experiences mean everything. So the Doctor being a minority in the person who's playing him, and hopefully that's reflected in the story and in the world, finally can really allow this show to evolve out of the shadow of Tennant and Russell T Davies and just kind of save itself from complete irrelevance. Oh, that's really mean. I was going to say something really mean, but I'm not going to say it. Let's really, really see how this British institution can change with the times and evolve out of its outdated expression and interpretation of reality and of the Doctor, who can actually be seen as just a representation of unbridled white privilege if you really think about it. And so many black children are about to have some amazing, hopefully, about to have some great representation. It's actually very interesting and can be a bit more of a nuanced conversation, as Gatwa's Doctor and the roles that he has played as an actor have been very queer-coded, which again is even a more nuanced conversation. But we'll have to see where that goes. But we'll end here. In the episode Kill the Moon, Series 8, Episode 7, the Doctor and his companion Clara Oswald arrive on the moon in the year 2049. They encounter a team of astronauts who are investigating a mysterious increase in the moon's mass. As they explore further, they discover that there is a gigantic creature which is hatching within the moon, causing it to break apart, which is really dumb science, especially for Doctor Who. As tensions rise and the fate of Earth hangs in the balance, the Doctor takes a controversial step. He leaves the ultimate decision to Clara and the other astronaut, Courtney Woods, to determine the fate of the creature. Clara, faced with the weighty moral dilemma, makes a decision which ultimately determines the creature's fate. And this episode is actually widely controversial and widely panned by the fan base, just due to the kind of low-key pro-life, anti-abortion messaging in there. And I'm not going to invalidate that discourse, but I'm going to try to pull something which I think was actually very good about this episode. And I think it's a common trait when we think about Doctor Who and the Moffat era. I have a lot of bias and nostalgia to that era of Doctor Who because I feel like for a lot of people and most of the general public, their nostalgia ties in with, the David Tennant era. Whereas with me, it was the late Matt Smith to Peter Capaldi. And I think what Moffat does really great, particularly with Capaldi's Doctor, is not entirely, but there is a feeling that every character moment, every conversation, every character interaction, particularly between the Doctor and Clara, is highly significant. And oh my god, the door's really pissing me off. The door's really pissing me off. And that every moment with these characters is important and significant. But for me, the way I interpreted this episode, again, through the reader with a racialized lens, is that there is some really unintentionally thoughtful exploration with Courtney Woods. And by discussing this, I'm kind of backing up what I've been saying about how Doctor Who's in need of an active reimagination, and how the reimagination of Doctor Who that will allow it to remain viable and relevant might be attached to how it explores different modes of expression, how they're experienced on Earth. So for example, race, gender, sexuality, a whole myriad of things, but how it can create a more meaningful politic for the show and just a more meaningful story, something that people can truly engage with. Because like I've said, and this has been a few weeks between what I've recorded, but how the story and the politic, and I think throughout this video essays I've kind of established with Doctor Who, it's not a thing where the story should be more important than the politic or the politic should be more important than the story, but they go kind of hand in hand. They have a synoptic link. I ate that. But anyway, yeah, so through the character arc of Courtney Woods and the storyline she kind of goes in with the Doctor and Clara, it's an example of how exploring lived experiences can be monumental in the Doctor and the other characters and the audience who see themselves through these characters. Courtney Woods is first introduced in Deep Breath as a disruptive and fiery Year 10 student who is defiant and combative towards her class teacher, companion Clara Oswald, whose mother. I think it's interesting that she's defined in the script for Deep Breath as the toughest looking girl in Year 10, and then she's cast as a black girl, which, take that however you want to take that. Stereotypes around black girls being loud, aggressive, or confrontational leads to unfair disciplinary action and disproportionately higher rates of suspension or exclusion, and a higher likelihood of being labelled as difficult or troublemakers. And that impacts the way the people who are disproportionately targeted in an education setting, it impacts their sense of self and self-esteem. Which is, although she's initially kind of portrayed as a pain in the arse, I've always been able to kind of sympathize with her character. Because her treatment, again, it mirrors unintentionally the reality for many black British youth. And that's why I love her character arc in The Caretaker and Kill the Moon. Because it's an example of how the character focus and arcs in season 8 are some of the best in the show. I think the scene in The Caretaker where the Doctor assumes that Clara is dating a Walmart Matt Smith and not Danny reeks of the microaggressive nature of the way that the Doctor was treating Martha and Mickey in the Russell T Davies era. And again, that's kind of like, I think that's the main crux of the issue. It's just a bit like, we might want to work on that, Doctor. But I do love the way the Doctor and Courtney interact with each other and the way their relationship is framed. In the same way we see how the Doctor doesn't see race and he's really an unracial universal being, I feel like this is one of those significant times where the Doctor just takes to someone on Earth.
I am. What about you?
I'm a disruptive influence.
Good to meet you.
And you.
Now get lost.
Okay. Cool. So that's really a spaceship?
I'm serious. I'm trying to save this planet.
End of the world for me tonight, whatever you do. Parents' evening.
Is your name really Disruptive Influence?
Courtney Woods.
And he's just being really frank. And I think there's also, I'm watching this really good video essay on the 12th Doctor and autism, which is really interesting. I'll link that below. He's really frank. He's like, listen, I'm an alien. This is a time machine. Like, I've got to save the world. Like, get out of my way. And for the character of Courtney Woods, you can see her kind of light up because it feels like that's the first time or some, like one of the most significant times where she's actually been engaged with on a human level. And it's a really sweet, touching character moment for both characters. But then you have the next episode, which is set up with Clara confronting the Doctor about him telling Courtney that she's not special.
Look, she says that you told her that she wasn't special.
Rubbish.
She says that's what sent her off the rails. Doctor, I know, but you say something like that to somebody, it hurts. Especially if you're somebody of her age, especially if you're you.
And from the Doctor's perspective, his comment to Courtney about her not being special may reflect, again, this alien, universal, unemotional perspective he has. However, it reflects the lack of understanding and empathy for the complexity of human emotions and experiences, which the episode and the series, in its exploration of the Doctor's core morality and principles as a figure of what is meant to be good in the universe, builds towards. And again, I think that's what makes Capaldi's Doctor stand out above all other Doctors, I think. I like how Clara takes up for her student and how it could be read, and how I read it is, this is Clara kind of understanding in a way that the Doctor can't, that for a black girl to hear that. And I felt really emotional when I watched it. I was like, for a black girl to hear, you're not special, I think it hits harder because of the way systematic forces in society does tell black women and black girls and black people that they're not special. But then through the episode, it's really nice, it's really sweet, because I think the Doctor realizes, actually, that's not all right. Like, what I've done is not okay. And I definitely feel like this has an impact. Not only the big conflict between the Doctor and Clara, but this interaction with Courtney Woods, where he's actually realizing, oh wait, hang on, like, to strip someone of their specialness isn't all right. It does have an impact on the Doctor and the way he chooses to interact with humans. And you can, for example, this seems to be paid off in The Night of the Forest. The Night in the Forest at Night, which features a cast of children. So whilst this episode delivers a shoddy moral messaging in some parts, I think there is this really beautiful message of self-esteem and self-worth, which I think is really important for black girls and children, and it's just one I admire. And I think it's a more beautiful and potent exploration of race on the show, more than Rosa or anything else has been able to accomplish. And I think it's a sign or expression of what the show could be in how it examines the Doctor, the companion, and the world around them, and how it can weave in social commentary, and not even just social commentary, but again, social context and lived experiences, and the core political heart of Doctor Who, which I guess it's very nuanced in and of itself, but how that can be weaved into the narrative and the characterization. By crafting these more thoughtful narratives that acknowledges the struggles, privileges, and triumphs of different individuals, human or non, the show can resonate with a broader audience and can become a more meaningful reflection of the human experience. Because scratch the horrible canon of the TV movie,
I'm half human.
the Doctor, ironically, I don't know if it's ironic, but he is the most human character on the show. And there's something that I think can really be explored there. In essence, Doctor Who can evolve beyond being just a fantastical adventure through space and time. It can become a compelling exploration of the complexities of humanity, with the Doctor and their companions serving as agents of change and growth. By embracing this potential, I think the show can continue to captivate audiences whilst challenging and inspiring them to think critically about the world we live in. As a fan who Doctor Who had a very formative experience on me in a way that I haven't really heard articulated by many others, I can only hope that the future of Doctor Who will embrace this opportunity to provoke deeper thought about meaningful issues and reflect what I've expressed in this video essay is what I think is the core heart, the core political heart of Doctor Who in a more better and authentic way. I did want to end this video of kind of talking about some comments I saw Russell T Davies made when he's talking about representation and how people have become, and writers, younger writers, have become more focused on representation rather than good story. And I hope what's really illustrated through my discussion in this video essay is that, again, I think I've already said this, but I like to re-emphasize myself, but representation shouldn't come over story. And in the same way, story shouldn't invalidate the need for representation in expressing something that is more human, that is more nuanced, that is captivating in what it's trying to say. And I think the only reason I think Russell T Davies was kind of weird for making these comments is because of the nature of Doctor Who as I've explored in this video essay. So for me, that was a bit weird. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I've really liked this. I've edited the first part of this video essay, so I'm just filming the epilogue. I'm at 8. This was something I think my camera died and then I couldn't be bothered to wait for it to recharge. So I just wanted to get the video done because, again, I've been working on this for some time and it was just a bit jarring for me. So I just said, you know, let me just edit the video, record a little something on my iPad. I've actually had to record it twice, because my photo book on my MacBook is just but anyway, yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I think I was a bit nervous to make this video just because I think with anything, I think the British population takes things with race in a particular way, but you know what, I don't care, because I think I'm expressing something that means something to me. And I think that's kind of the whole point of this channel, which actually turned a year. No, I actually did upload on the date, but this is my first proper video essay where I'm oh yeah, this is my 1 year anniversary on YouTube. So I just wanted to kind of say thank you for all the support in the past year. I'm really going to try be intentional about creating community, and I think the reason why I want to do that is to really express what I think is at the heart of my online presence and my content. It's the idea of looking at how popular culture and media intersects with the way social and political reality is experienced. So I hope to continue to express that. I hope to continue showing that not just on my YouTube channel. I have kind of opened up. I've got more social media now. The way I've worded that sounds really weird. I've opened up. Shut up. But no, I've been working a lot more on different types of content. So mainly my short form content, which goes on my TikTok and IG Reel, which is all at St. Adamson. So go follow me there, where I hope to kind of just share a bit more on topical issues. I also do album retrospects. I'm trying to, really build that and work on that. Also, I'd like to announce, I like to say that I have a Patreon, which has one tier only. It's only $2.50 a month. So if you want to support me and kind of get a bit more of the inner workings of my process and just provide support, I got a comment in my Striking Vipers video about how my channel's like a kind of diamond in the rough, and I didn't know how to take it, to be honest, initially, but I do think just support would be appreciated. So if you can support both physically and just with comments and the words of affirmation, which I really do appreciate, my Patreon is there. I also have my Cash App, so if you're I earn more than $2.50 a month, I can support me in any way that you feel possible. So my Cash App is there for any donations, any well wishes, because cost of living. But also, no, I do want to create a system of feedback and just where I can grow, and where I can just have a bit more support so I can spend more time on making videos, and I do really want to increase my output. So also my Patreon, I'll be kind of being a bit more, not vulnerable, but I'll be expressing the creative process in making videos. The next part of this incidentally intersectional video will be on Glee, but that's going to take some time. I need some time. I'm tired of talking about race. So I know what's coming next. And if you subscribe to my Patreon, I'm going to be taking you through that process and just like my general content creation process. Let me leave off with a hint for my next video, which is going to be where I speak on it. Let's see if you know, you know. But that's the next video, I say. And I've actually been working on for that some time. So I've written treatments in like May, and it's now July. So maybe it was even April, May, whatever y'all got going on. Yes, thank you guys so much for watching. Love you, appreciate you, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.